So how do you run the ideal webinar? And I think the first thing is I want to take you through is there's no such thing as the ideal webinar. There's no such thing as a professional webinar. Because I'm already thinking, Ashley, in a professional webinar, I probably should have a shirt on or maybe a dress rather than my favorite cuddly jumper on. You know, there's no such thing as an ideal webinar. Ashley, have we managed to run an ideal webinar yet?
Yeah, every single one, Heather. Come on. I think the way we do webinars is more about the human. So if anyone's on here wants to do professional stuff, and again, that comes out when you're doing webinars, you know, as an accountant. If you come over as human, then people are going to love you more and you'll get more business. If you come over as too informative or too stuffy or whatever, then people are going to go, oh, that's not really who I want to deal with. And I know some of the characters in the club, they've got the potential to do awesome webinars. So no, I think it's all about being human, Heather.
Yes, because remember, just as if you were doing a seminar, this is a chance for people to get to know you as a person. This is a chance to get to know people, to know how you think, to how you'll be with them as if they're your accountant. And so actually it's really important that you turn up as yourself. It's also really important, and get rid of these ideas of ideal webinars or professional, because far too often that holds us back from running it, because we think we have to have the professional webinar, the perfect webinar, all the I's crosses and the T's dotted. And one of the things we're getting better at, Ashley, is the discipline, isn't it? I keep meaning to have a checklist that we run through before we run any workshop or webinar. It's still in my head, that checklist, isn't it? But at least this time, have you noticed, I've got how to run a lead generation webinar and the right date on the bottom of my slides. Whereas quite a few ones recently, I'm like, oh, beep, I forgot to do that. So, and the thing with the webinar, it is a marketing tool. It's a marketing and sales tool. And so just like any marketing or sales activity, you should measure the inputs and the outputs. And as I just said, waiting until you got to perfect just stops you from doing it. You know, this is something where, you know, members of our club have told us that they took the running jump, didn't they? They jumped off the cliff. They hoped that the parachute was opened, and most of them found that it worked. And that's the reality. And even if the parachute didn't open, it's an opportunity to learn and to try again. And this is the thing that we find. People don't start with the end in mind. And before you even go, I'm going to run a subject on cash, I'm going to run a webinar on cash flow, or I'm going to run a webinar on this, start with the end in mind. What are you really trying to do? You know, are you trying to inform your current client base in a one-to-many way to stop the phone ringing up about, can I claim furlough? You know, is it about that? Is it about, are you wanting to stay top of mind to help with client referrals? Actually, is this about selling an additional service to new clients, to whatever? Is this about getting clients into a software product? Is it about winning new clients? And so the first thing you really need to think about is, what are you doing it for? And, you know, we, until coronavirus hit, had started to build a process where the webinars gave you an excuse, Ashley, didn't it, to ring people up?
Yeah.
Which gave you an excuse to qualify them if they took your call.
Yeah.
We then had the physical workshops, didn't we, Ashley, which gave us a real ability to then properly qualify, because if people were going to give up a day to come and see us, we knew that they were serious.
The thing is, with a webinar, anybody can jump on a webinar, and I think we're all guilty of signing up for a webinar and not actually turning up. Whereas with a workshop, you've got to pay physical money, you've probably got to travel, you've probably got to pay physical cash for a hotel room. So you really are invested. So yeah.
So the big thing that you've got to do is, who do I want there? You know, and, you know, is it existing clients? Is it existing clients, potential clients? Who do I actually want there? Because until you've answered that question, that will determine some of the things you do to get people to turn up. The next thing is, when will they attend a webinar? And this is absolutely key. We now won't run a webinar before 9:30 in the morning for our small accountancy firm clients. The reason is that 9:30 is the magic moment, because that's the point that Zero used to run a lot of webinars. So we know that accountants are educated that 9:30 is a good time for a webinar. We also won't run it at 9 o'clock because we know that so many of our network of our client personas are running team meetings online at that point with their team. They ain't going to come to a webinar. So when we also know with webinars that actually with both sides of our business, that the more we go through the day, the more we go through the day, the greater the reduction in our turn up rate. So we know if we run a webinar at 9:30 or 10 a.m. in the morning, we'll get 55 to 60% turn up rate. And we rarely get outside that, do we, Ashley?
No.
In fact, you would stake your unborn grandchild's life on it that we'd get 55 to 60% turn up rate. You know, we have that level of confidence. You have to know what pain points they motivated to solve. When will they actually turn up? If you haven't done client personas, you know, this is the time to go and revisit those. You know, how quickly do we do that with members in the club, Ashley?
Pretty much after joining.
Yeah, absolutely. If you don't know who you want in the club, if you don't know who you want as a new client, don't even think about doing this stuff. So actually, when it comes to webinars, you need 4 sets of processes. What am I going to do to get people to register? What am I going to do to get people to turn up? What am I going to do to get people to stay to the end? And what am I going to do to get people to buy? And these are going to be different based on what you're trying to do. Let's quickly take you through the technology. So you want a webinar or online meeting software. Skype is not good enough. It's too unreliable for dropping out. Skype for Business is also crap as well, so please don't go there. But Zoom, Microsoft Teams, GoToWebinar, you know, expensive ones, WebEx, Adobe Connect, they're all very good. Google Meet is, you know, Google are pumping a lot of work into it. So my son is having online lessons at the moment through Google Meet, and that now apparently is about to do breakout rooms. So there are options there. If you've got a G Suite account, if you've got a Microsoft Office 365 account, you'll automatically have Teams in. I've got hiccups again. You'll automatically have Google Meet in again. And actually some of those, and they are rapidly putting in the infrastructure that Zoom has, that we can run breakout rooms and all of that sort of stuff. Goes without saying, you need a decent broadband and ideally a webcam. We found this really, really useful to have an automated diary booking system. So what you'll find at some point, Ashley will go, those of you that want to have a chat with me to talk about joining the club, here's a link to my diary. Ashley, would you demonstrate, please? And yes, Alistair, if you want the webinar rather than, we're at the moment using Zoom's online meeting facility. If you want that webinar, I think it's about an extra £32 a month. But things like being able to automate the get into my diary this way, particularly online, cuts out a lot of the to and fro. You need a tool or a way of collecting people's details if you want to register. If you go for a true webinar tool, like the Zoom webinar add-on, like GoToWebinar, you'll have those inbuilt webinar tools. If you have the online meeting tools, those don't necessarily have, because I remember we ran a workshop with PI and they said, can we have the attendance reports, please? Can we have who registered? I said, it's an online meeting, we don't get those reports. So you get with the webinar, the pure webinar tools, you get a lot more marketing tools. But things like Eventbrite is a very quick way of getting people to accept and send without having all of the email automation tools that invite people, that remind people.